She is Annie Murphy, and Annie is in the midst of a long tour promoting her book. It's called Forbidden Fruit. It's been written by Annie with the help of an old friend of ours, Peter DeRosa. And I was on the phone actually this morning with Peter, having a chat with him. Annie, welcome to Downtown Radio.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming along. It seems that every time I've turned on the television or lifted a newspaper or listened to other radio stations over the last week or so, your face and your voice has been there. How have you been coping with the amazing publicity which you've been getting since your arrival in Ireland?
I think you're kind of astounded by it, but at the same time, each interview is new, and that's how you get through it. Yeah. It's like a job, and each interview is new.
And have you found that interviewers have been leaping in at the deep end and asking the hard questions, as it were, first to make sure that they get them all out of the way?
On the most part, no. There have been a few occasions. I think on the most part, people have been very decent.
In all of your interviews?
Yes.
Now, since you arrived in Ireland, a couple of weeks ago, we have heard, I've read, you can tell me if it's true or not, is there a camera crew with you from America? Because we've read about this.
When I first arrived, there was a camera crew. I was the first couple of days, 2020, from America. We spent about 2.5 days going around Kerry and doing some interviews and some shots.
Was that for news purposes, or is it going to be a separate program perhaps at a later date?
It's going to be a separate program at a later date.
Now, I've just this morning finished reading Forbidden Fruit, and I have tried hard not to take on board what others have said and what others have written. And I hope that will not come through when we are talking today. I want to take you back to the very beginning to tell my listeners the circumstances of your meeting, and indeed the circumstances of you coming to Ireland for the first time to meet Bishop Casey. Why did you come?
I had been invited by Bishop Casey. He had met my father in London about 4 months earlier, and my father expressed concern that his child that he once knew, he no longer knew. And Eamon said, send Annie for me, for Ireland has tremendous peace and serenity, and maybe she will rediscover.
You'd met him as a little girl in America?
Yes, I did, when I was about 7 years old.
And you seemed, it says in the book, as far as I can read it anyway, you certainly remembered that meeting with him. He was a character to you.
Yes, he was, because there was a tremendous sadness in his eyes. Children.
But you as a child saw?
Yes, but I was very observant. I was the youngest, and sometimes the youngest have to jump around. Who's going to pick on him next?
You also say that, I think, at one of those meetings as a child, that you had told little lies, like little girls do, or little boys sometimes do, and that he was going to wash your mouth out with soap and water and tidy up the old image as a child. Looking back on that, how do you... Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
What I was going to do is as a child, my teenage brothers used to pay me to curse at people.
Lovely.
So I went behind his ear and cursed at him.
And did he pay the fine? Did he pay up?
He wanted something else. I was going to show him something that I had hidden behind my fireplace, and I said, well, if you give me 10 cents, I'll
let you see it.
He said, well, I'm not like your brothers.
I see. Well,
he was different.
Different indeed. So the time that you came to Ireland at his invitation to try and, as we would say in this part of the world, share your head and to get yourself back together again, because you had a very stormy relationship with Stephen in America. Yeah. Could you tell me about that relationship, about that?
It was just, I was young and impetuous, and I just... this man seemed kind of mad for me, and I didn't have a lot of confidence, and I felt if somebody, if he was mad for me, then I was lucky to have that kind of affection and admiration. But it turned out that we were both very young, and he didn't really want to commit himself to that kind of relationship.
But you ended up, you got pregnant by Stephen, and had a miscarriage.
Yes.
And that, from my reading of the book, has haunted you in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain what happened? I mean, you did not want to be pregnant by this man.
Well, what had happened, the marriage had turned, and I felt that I was trapped, and I felt that I was afraid that I wouldn't love the baby.
Because of the circumstances
Yes.
under which the baby was conceived.
Yes, I felt that I might not love it, and I might not be a good parent, you know. My mother and I did not have a good relationship, and I lived in fear of, you know, making that same mistake.
You actually also say in the book that you learnt to lie as a child because of your mother's problem with alcohol.
Well, I learned to lie in order to protect.
Yes, to protect her and
Protect her, and also to keep my father's love, because in a way I was protecting him, because he didn't want to know. He didn't want to face it.
that she was alcoholic.
That she was as alcoholic as bad as she was. So I was the chief enabler.
Have you, I may be wrong, but I think I remember reading, do you drink now?
No, you occasionally, if I'm on a rough flight, I am a coward, and if it's more than 4 hours, I might take a drink of wine because I just don't want to start panicking.
Oh,
But that is very rare. That's about the time, and I go back and I admit it. They give me,
What do you
What
need
for?
to go on?
yeah, when you give me you shouldn't do that, you know.
Well, sure, wouldn't it be lovely to be perfect?
Yeah, I wish I were.
Not too many people like that about, Annie. The thing also of suffering from agoraphobia.
Yes, after the miscarriage, I don't know what it was for guilt or whatever. I had suffered from agoraphobia, and it was quite bad.
Do you still suffer panic attacks in any way?
I got panic attacks back at some points in my life. They were infrequent, but a couple of years ago, after taking care of my mother for many years, Alzheimer's, and doing tremendous building, doing well and then kind of not doing well, I developed a different type of panic that I only get at night, witching hour about 2 o'clock.
Are you scared of the dark?
Yes, I think I am. I had an incident in my childhood that they pulled out 2 years ago, and they found out partially why.
Can you talk with that about with
I
me about that?
had my mother was always very busy when she went on a tear. So I
Busy.
yeah, she was very busy. It was a big house, and she was rambling around and talking to people I didn't know, and I didn't know if people were there. And at that point, you have to make a conscious decision: am I going to help her, or am I going to help myself? And at this night, I was exhausted, and I went into her closet. And she was a clothes horse. It was a small closet, and I shut the door, and I went in with my feather down comforter, which is kind of in the spring, and I closed the door, and I decided I'd just plug my ears and go to sleep. And she must have heard rattling in the closet, and she slammed the door shut, and something must have caught. Now, I'm very young. I was maybe 10 at the time. And I must have fallen asleep, and I woke up, and I felt I couldn't breathe, and it was pitch dark. And I tried to open the door, and I couldn't. And I actually felt like, and probably, you know, a child's imagination, but I felt I was going to suffocate in there. And I remember hearing her about 6 o'clock, you know, roused up. It must have been from 4 until 6. I was in this state of panic. And you know, something in you tells you, don't waste your breath, you know, whatever. And I started kicking at the door when she opened it up. But I think that was the first experience I had of, that was my
real
first panic. Real
Right.
panic.
Annie, stay with me. We're heading up towards news headlines at 3:30. We will return after that, and we'll be talking more of the story that Annie has told in Forbidden Fruit, which she has written with Peter DeRosa. And today with me in studio is Annie Murphy, who is in Northern Ireland today on the publication of her book Forbidden Fruit, which tells the story of her secret love, as it was for many years, with the Bishop of Galway. I've been talking, Annie, before the news headlines about the sort of childhood you had. We can't obviously in a short programme go into everything. We talked about the problems with your mother and indeed the first marriage, which just did not work out, the fact that you had a miscarriage. And then following the breakup of that marriage, you escaped. You wanted to come to Ireland, and Bishop Casey said he would take you in on with your father's permission and help
He kind of invited me.
to look after
He
you.
invited me.
Was it love at first sight?
There was something there that I have never experienced. Certainly, you know, as I said, I came over as a not quite 25-year-old, and I was met by this man that was edging up to 50. So it wasn't something that I thought, gee, I'm coming over here and I'm going to have this grand, he really, but when I met him and immediately when I saw him, I saw a very different man that I had remembered. He was glowing. He had this dancing eyes and he had this very erect posture. And he looked very happy. He looked so pleased with himself, tremendous confidence, all the things that really were kind of lacking from me, within me.
Did you think, do you think, or have you ever discussed it with Bishop Casey, what he was expecting? Because I get the impression he was maybe expecting the little girl that he had seen all those years ago.
He was expecting a very broken woman. Mm-hmm. Somebody very, kind of her posture down and stuff. But I didn't present myself as that. I might have felt somewhat of that in me, but I was kind of excited to go, and I didn't look half bad. I dressed up for the occasion, and in those days, and I'm not saying now, I had fairly decent posture, so I could walk a straight line and look presentable.
That drive from the airport back to Inch, is it what do you call the house? Red?
Well, actually, in those days, it was just called Inch. Now it is called Red Cliffs. It's a bread and breakfast.
Could you describe for my listeners, because I had the pleasure of reading it, what that drive was like?
It was incredible. I guess I noticed his red socks, and I had heard about his driving. And I teased him, I said, what are those red socks about, kind of thing. But the drive was, it was like being a teenager again. I had lived in Texas, and we played chicken, and we went 115 miles an hour. But these are straight roads you're talking about. You're not talking about Irish roads. And I was literally breathless. I mean, there was a sense of recklessness, danger, kind of somebody courting danger, but yet at the same time had this tremendous confidence that absolutely nothing would happen, as though he was impervious to harm. And that became infectious to me.
Well, as well as that obvious attraction between the two of you when you first met, when you came off that plane, then we had the drive back to Inch. I mean, if I remember correctly, by about four days later, you had the first kiss, for example.
About a week into it.
Yes.
Yeah, about a week into it.
With, in the meantime, a lot of physical contact and, holding hands or stroking your hair, that sort of stuff.
It seemed a warm, affectionate type.
And very, very quickly after the first kiss, then came the first sexual encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in a very, very short time.
Mm-hmm.
I think you see people who maybe haven't read the book are wondering, how did someone, a woman,
mm-hmm.
get into bed with someone she knew to be a bishop, to be a priest, a man who was supposed to be celibate? Could you answer that to people who would ask that question?
Well, the thing I can say is that part of it was that we were of course he was a bishop, but I didn't see all the trappings because I was isolated in a very remote country area, and he was in his country home, and so that didn't seem to be as apparent. I was not brought up in a very rigid Catholic way, and I had left the church when I was 17. And I guess I was so starved for what was coming my way, I ignored it, and I went with it.
Did the bishop at any time ever talk to you about your faith or lack of it?
Yes, he certainly did. There were nights in the beginning when he was saying, there are all types of healing, and you have gone to therapy. And I said, yes, I've done a lot of healing. He said, but the healing of the soul is a completely different type of healing, and it needs to be done.
There's a name that I remember from the book, a young lady called Siobhan, whom Bishop Casey, according to you, told you a story of this girl. Could you relate that part of the story to my listeners today about,
yes, he
about the baby?
Yes, he told me that there was a young girl in London when he was staying there, and it was a case that was sent to him, and he had taken her through a traumatic time where she became pregnant, and she decided she wanted to keep her child. And he stayed with her through this time, and he felt she should give the child up. He felt that was best for her. She was having kind of a rough time of it, but she was a good mother. And the little boy stayed with her until he was, I think, 18 months, if I'm not mistaken. And then finally, they came to an agreement and he had the child adopted. And,
Do you believe that Bishop Casey had anything to do with the birth of that child?
Later on, it was one picture on his desk that he kept in his, and being a woman, and, looking around, kind of thinking later on, I would be scrutinizing the picture. But that does not say I have no proof, but occasionally I think, gee, is this the first? But that was only supposition. That was only me in my mind wondering, what am I facing?
There's other parts of the book which stunned me, and I'm not talking about the revelations of the actual what went on in bed and all the rest of that. I mean, if people want to read that, they can go out and buy the book and read it.
Yeah.
Things like the man seemed to enjoy the good life. I mean, he enjoyed fine food, fine wines. He seemed to drink an awful lot, Annie, from what you say in the book.
He had a remedy for a cold. He had a remedy for a headache.
What was that?
Well, a remedy from a cold could be. Well, actually, it was a stomach. He had a remedy for hot milk and brandy. Cold was poutine and some milk. Gin and tonic.
Or was that for a headache?
Yeah, headache. He had a lot of remedies, that were quite good for some ailments. And he loved his wine. He basically had a bottle of wine, and he might have had one or two brandies after that, but a whole bottle of wine and a couple of brandies, to me, because see, I can't hold liquor very well, seemed a lot.
Well, I think you admit that in the book by the story that you and, what was her name? I can't remember. Mary.
Yeah.
The night that you ended up dancing on his precious piano. I mean, that's an absolutely... I laughed when I read that bit because I could visualise what was going on. I mean, the bishop coming home from a hard day at the office to find one absolutely paralytic in bed already, and you dancing on his mother's piano.
Yeah. Well, because I must take blame for that. She had given me the poutine, and I had an absolutely fiery feeling. And I poured her another poutine, and she said, no, I don't think I should take that. And I said, well, just one to make sure you sleep well. And that poutine is something else.
Yeah, I've never tried it, of course.
Well, it does, right. Well, for me, I felt like I was ablaze.
Well, they say it can have that effect. But tell me what happened when he came in and discovered you doing this.
Well, really, he was aghast because all the lights were on and the music was blaring. I think it was Suspicion by Elvis Presley. And I was dancing on his piano, and he asked, where's Mary? Where's Mary? And all the whole house was just turned upside down. His quaint country retreat was like a disco. And then he looked at me, and I was on his piano, and he was, actually, I think he was afraid I was going to fall and hurt myself. And he was trying to do a balancing act of getting me off the piano. And then he realized that I was going to do a split on his piano, and he was kind of grabbing the things that were falling off. And he was kind of, you stay there, and, saying, you have to have a drink with me. And I was having fun with him, being a little bit of a devil and trying to see I had control at that point. He was down there and I was up here. And so that it was a playful time,
Oh, we've mentioned the fact that the first kiss came along 4 or 5 days into you meeting him, and the first sexual encounter very shortly after that. The way that happened, however, you express doubts about yourself even in the book, because he was at that time using medication for an illness.
Yes.
And you do ask the question, I mean, did this happen because, of a drug-induced stupor or whatever? Have you ever answered the question for yourself? Do you think that it happened? Why did it happen that night?
I think it happened quicker than it would have happened.
Because of that.
And I did put my arms up and say no, and I thought I would give him solace. He was very, very ill. So in that respect, and I even told him, I said, yeah, I feel very bad. I feel kind of like, that it happened because of you were under the influence of something. And it's not that's a terrible feeling for me, and it must be for you.
Stay with me, Annie. We'll come back in just a moment. Annie, there's so many questions I want to ask you, and if the next few minutes
Sure.
sound a bit disjointed, it's because I don't want to leave anything out.
Fine.
I want to ask you, everybody has asked the question, why did you write the book? And I now
Sure.
will ask it on behalf of my listeners. Why did you write the book?
I had heard and story has come out that other people were going to start writing it. And, you start thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, I'll write my version of it. And also for my son's education. He hopes to go to, he said he wants to go to law school, we'll see.
How does he feel about what has happened now as a result of the book being published and such furore surrounding it?
He doesn't know about the fury, really. He doesn't. He is in school, and he's in the midst of probably the heaviest schedule he has. So he knows a little bit about it, but I think with everything else he has to contend with, he's kind of, pushed it aside a little bit.
Some people have said that the book reeks of revenge, something that you wanted to get back at the bishop for because he would not recognise your son in the first place. Is there any feeling of, if you don't do what I want you to do, then I'm going to make you sorry?
Well, 17 years is a long time to wait for revenge. You do have another player that comes in, and that is my son. And as my son said to me, you have both handled this very badly. You were both foolish. And for the past 17 years, you've done no better. So you have another player that comes in and said, well, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to, start taking care of myself and seeking what I need for me. So therefore you have a different element here.
And it was really because of that you then decided to tell the story.
Well, it kind of evolved, really. Peter went to an attorney in Connecticut and then went to an attorney in Ireland, and then things started to get out, and then here we are. So he wanted to go to do it legally. Was there ever a point when you thought that maybe Bishop Casey would leave the church and that you two would be together as a couple? Sure. There were times, when I thought that, and there were probably, a few times in my life that, perchance, kind of a dream type of thing. And when you're that enamored with each other, I think they're natural thoughts. That answer, it is true.
When did you realize that would never be?
When I was about 7 months pregnant, and I realized when he came in with the teachings that he had been taught and his role in life had come forward, which you'd have to, kind of expect. And he came in with the prayer books and the thought that, I must give up my baby. And he said to me, Annie, I just don't think you are ready for motherhood. Now, that could possibly be true. I mean, that could be part of it. It's not fair to say he used that as a whipping post against me. He felt I was very free and kind of a free spirit, and not what he might have considered in his own version.
Do you think that the two of you could ever sit down in a room and have a conversation following the writing of this book?
Well, that would have to be up to Bishop Casey, and I'd have to take it up from, he'd have to start.
So you won't be ringing him up and saying, let's meet and have a drink, or let's meet or go out for dinner or anything like that?
No, I don't think so.
Not at all?
At this point in time, you never can tell, but at this point in time, it looks doubtful.
Where is he at the minute? Do you know?
I don't know. I've heard so many rumors, but as I say, they are rumors.
No, you've no proof as to where he is?
No, that's exactly it. I have no proof.
Peter has met him on 2 occasions, am I correct?
Peter met him on one occasion and declined on another.
On a second occasion?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they can ever have a father-son relationship?
Well, a father-son relationship, he lost the childhood, the part.
Yeah.
But some kind of friendship, some kind of bonding. Eamon has written him a letter. Peter wrote him, and he has called him and has expressed desire to, after all the publicity, to meet with Peter at some time and hopefully maybe start something.
Your partner, is it Arthur?
Arthur, yes.
How does he fit into all this now?
How does he fit into all this now?
Because I mean, the last thing I think I remember reading a couple or 3 weeks ago, maybe before you arrived in Ireland, was you crawling to a neighbour's door, very distraught because there'd been a row in the house between Peter and Arthur.
Yes.
Then you must have literally left for Ireland very shortly after that.
Yeah.
What way did you leave that relationship?
Well, it's been a tough time, you know. Arthur's Scottish and is a builder, and I don't think he thought, he had some disappointments. And also, to be quite honest with you, Arthur's diabetic. He was on prednisone, which accentuates the sugar, sends it way, way up. So Arthur was in a little bit of a different place physically. And I think in Connecticut we have the toughest laws on any domestic violence. If anybody is called, you go right to court.
So we'll wait and read about that then in months to come.
Not really much. I think it'd be okay. It's kind of like a storm in a teacup, but that's what they do to make sure that it doesn't turn into anything else.
Well, you're leaving me. Well, we have to because there's another disc jockey knocking at the door waiting to get in. I thank you for taking time to come and join me today. There are many more questions I want to ask, but time doesn't permit it this afternoon. When you finish here in Ireland with Forbidden Fruit, what would you do now? Is this all out of your system now?
I'd say so.
And what will you do? Will you go back? Will you work? Or move house or what?
I'll go back to work, and in September I go back to school, start school.
Start school? To do what?
I really don't know. I'm going to take a few courses, psychology, English, finish my degree.
Right. Well, we wish you well.
I thank you.
Thanks for coming today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay here in our part of Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Annie Murphy, it's 5 minutes now before 4 o'clock. I knew there was something else. Annie, could I ask you, why choose Peter DeRosa to write the book with? And I wanted to ask you that all day.
Of course.
Because, we know my listeners are well aware that Peter left the priesthood because he wanted to marry and all.
Well, I felt Peter had a good feel of the church, and he had known Amen, and I had read some of his works, and I liked them, and I felt that maybe he could add a dimension that no one else could. He could give that other side maybe a little bit more balance, not so one-sided. He could add another dimension to it that I felt was important.
Well, I really mean it. I'm away this time. Thank you very much indeed.